Now for the news in detail. President Donald Trump says he will sign an executive order to temporarily suspend all immigration to the U.S. In a tweet, Trump said that measure would help fight coronavirus and protect the jobs of American citizens. The White House, though, has declined to comment about the reasoning behind the decision, its timing, or its legal basis. The U.S. economy has come to a near standstill as more than 22 million people applied for unemployment benefits during the past month. The U.S. is the worst hit country from COVID-19 with over 42,000 deaths. The new coronavirus has killed over 170,000 people worldwide, while almost 2.5 million have been infected. In the U.S., 1,500 more people died from the fatal disease in the past 24 hours, raising the total there to over 42,000. More in this report.
Protests in opposition to the lockdowns enforced to contain COVID-19 in many countries are becoming a major challenge for authorities. In the U.S., medical workers and health experts cautioned that lifting lockdowns too soon risk unleashing a greater disaster. President Donald Trump has been accused of inciting insurrection after championing the demonstrators. But at a White House briefing, Trump urged Americans to continue social distancing efforts.
At a time when millions of American workers and families are struggling with the financial consequences of the virus, it's critical to continue the medical war while reopening the economy in a safe and responsible fashion. During this time, Americans must maintain strict vigilance and continue to practice careful hygiene, social distancing, and the other protective measures.
The International Committee of the Red Cross has stepped up efforts to prevent the spread of coronavirus in overcrowded prisons in South Asia. India recorded its biggest single-day spike in cases as the government eased lockdown, allowing some manufacturing and agricultural activity to resume. In Italy, the number of new infections has fallen for the first time since the country's outbreak began. After Italy, Spain, and the US, France has become the fourth country to cross 20,000 coronavirus deaths.
Tonight, our company passes a symbolic mark, a particularly painful one, and we sadly announce more than 20,000 deaths. Despite the French people's effort to scrupulously respect the confinement, physical and social distancing, and other barrier gestures, the epidemic remains very fatal. And so we all have to stay vigilant, mobilized, conscious that our efforts should last and that we should not give up.
China has reported 11 new confirmed cases on the mainland with no new deaths. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia has banned all prayers inside the holy mosques in Mecca and Medina during the month of Ramadan.
Pakistan has recorded the highest single-day COVID-19 cases after 796 people tested positive in the country, while 16 more died. The country's death count now stands at 192, and the total number of infection cases are at over 9,200. The health ministry said over 2,000 people have recovered from the disease so far. It said nearly 112,000 tests have been conducted across the country, with over 5,300 in the last 24 hours. Meanwhile, the International Monetary Fund has backed the government's construction package to support daily wagers. Speaking at an online policy dialogue, the IMF's representative in Islamabad, Teresa Daban Sanchez, expressed confidence in Pakistan's economic policies. In Afghanistan, the governor of the eastern KHOST province has escaped a roadside bomb attack. The attack comes a day after 28 Afghan policemen were killed in alleged encounters with the Taliban. The governor's spokesperson said Muhammad Halim Fedai remained unhurt in the explosion near his office. Rescue officials said 5 people, including 2 guards and 3 civilians, were wounded. No one has yet claimed responsibility for the attack. Iran has demanded the U.S. end its presence in the Persian Gulf, terming American forces an obstacle in normal patrol operations. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Abbas Mousavi said foreign forces should end their illegitimate presence in the region. Mousavi was responding to U.S. allegations that 11 Iranian military vessels violated international norms as they circled U.S. ships in the Persian Gulf last week. Revolutionary Guards have acknowledged the incident, saying that the U.S. sparked the tense encounter without providing details. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps has said it's increased the range of its naval missiles from 45 to 700 kilometers. In an interview, the IRGC commander, Brigadier General Ali Raza Tangsiri, said the country did this without any foreign assistance. Syria says it has thwarted an Israeli air attack over Palmyra city and shot down multiple missiles. State media said the projectiles were destroyed before reaching their targets. There were no immediate reports of damage or casualties. The attack came only hours after a meeting of President Bashar al-Assad and the Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif in Damascus. Since the beginning of the Syrian conflict in 2011, Israel has carried out hundreds of such attacks. Israel has not claimed responsibility for this raid yet. Turkey says the Syrian government has been violating the ceasefire in the northwestern Idlib region. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan warned that the regime in Damascus would suffer heavy losses if it persisted with such violations. Speaking in Istanbul after a cabinet meeting, Erdogan said the Syrian government was using the coronavirus outbreak as an opportunity to ramp up violence in Idlib. He also said that Ankara would not allow any dark groups in the region to violate the ceasefire either. On March 5th, Turkey and Russia agreed to halt hostilities in northwestern Syria. Before the ceasefire, an escalation of clashes in the region displaced nearly 1 million people. U.S. President Donald Trump has asked South Korea to pay more in military defense costs while rejecting Seoul's latest offer. U.S. officials earlier said that South Korea's offer included an increase of at least 13% from the previous cost-sharing accord. Trump said the U.S. is doing a tremendous job of defending South Korea, but Washington should be treated fairly. He lauded Washington's wonderful relationship with Seoul before saying his decision was not about reducing U.S. military forces. He said it is up to Seoul if they wanted to contribute towards the defense of their own nation.
We are negotiating for President Moon and for South Korea to help us monetarily, because we, as you know, we have 32,000 soldiers there. That varies from 28 to 32,000 in South Korea. And we think that before I came aboard, they paid very little, if anything. So we're defending a wonderful nation, a nation that we have great relationships, but we're asking them to pay for a big percentage of what we're doing. It's not fair.
Well, Trump said he is negotiating with South Korea's President Moon Jae-in to help the U.S. monetarily for its service. China has criticized India's new foreign direct investment policy, saying it is against the principles of the World Trade Organization. Last week, India stepped up scrutiny of investments from companies based in neighboring countries, mainly targeting Beijing. In a statement, China's embassy in New Delhi said the rules are based on discrimination and are against free and fair trade. The embassy spokesperson Ji Rong said new rules are making it much more difficult for neighboring states to invest in India. She said China's investment in India is over $8 billion, which is far more than the total investments of other neighbors. The spokesperson said the impact of Delhi's new policy on Chinese investors is clear. In India, more than 100 people have been arrested for allegedly beating 3 men to death in the western state of Maharashtra. The incident happened in the Palghar district on Thursday, but a video of the attack went viral on Sunday. Reports say the men, who were reportedly mistaken for thieves, were going to a funeral when the mob dragged them out of their car. The mob reportedly suspected that the men were child abductors and started beating them as police struggled to rescue them. Attacks over child abduction rumors have occurred in the past in different parts of the country. India has been under lockdown since the 25th of March to curb the spread of COVID-19. In India, Modi's decision to extend a nationwide lockdown to halt the spread of coronavirus has left thousands of migrant workers with no food or shelter. They now have nowhere to go and are forced to collect scraps from fields to survive. Let's now take a look at the wretched condition of India's migrant workers in this report.
Migrant workers have been left at the mercy of circumstances in the financial hub of India. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi extended the nationwide lockdown on 1.3 billion people until 3rd May to contain the coronavirus. But it has been grossly mismanaged, leaving poor migrant workers stranded with no work and no way to reach home. Migrant workers fear they will starve to death even if they survive the pandemic.
Apart from financial problems, we have many more issues. We are running out of cooking gas and we don't have money to refill it. Everybody is trapped in the lockdown and nobody is going to help us. How will we cook food when there will be no cooking gas? I think we will die out of hunger rather than coronavirus.
तो हम लोग तो कोरोना वायरस से नहीं खाने से मर जाता है.
The lockdown sparked protests by jobless migrant workers in Mumbai earlier this week.
हमारा जो है डेली का earnings है.
We are daily wage workers and we run our family with those earnings. We have no income due to the lockdown. We are unable to pay the room rent. There's scarcity of grocery. We are facing a lot of problems.
काफी मुसीबत झेल रहे हैं हम लोग.
In northwestern Bhilwara city, the daily wage workers are collecting scraps from agricultural fields to survive.
We are facing troubles because there is no work to do. We don't have money to even eat food. We had a little rice left, but it's over now. We have no grains left. We are collecting scraps from agricultural fields and we go there every day and somehow fill our stomach.
507 people have died of the novel coronavirus and at least 13,000 infected in the country so far. Modi has taken strict measures to prevent these figures from rising higher. But India could soon be in the grip of a new crisis as a consequence of these very actions.
In Sri Lanka, a 24-hour curfew has been eased, with most parts of the country now facing only a nighttime curfew. Public transport resumed operations and businesses were partially reopened. However, a few areas identified to be hotspots for coronavirus will still have the 24-hour curfew, including the capital, Colombo. The highly populated western province will be reopened for business next Monday. Private sector managers have been told only a minimum number of workers are allowed to run operations. Sri Lanka has 304 coronavirus cases and 7 deaths. Meanwhile, the National Election Commission chairman said parliamentary elections would be held on June 20th. I'll be back after this break with plenty more news. Stay tuned for that. Welcome back. The Palestine Liberation Organization has warned against Israeli annexation of Palestinian lands after the formation of Tel Aviv's new unity government. PLO Secretary General Saeb Erekat said annexation would destroy any chances of dialogue between both sides. Erekat said the Tel Aviv administration has an option of opening ways for talks or endangering peace through settlements and annexation. He urged the global community to hold Israel accountable and make it implement its commitments under international law. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has already announced his plans to annex key parts of East Jerusalem and the West Bank, as per the U.S. Middle East plan. In Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his rival Benny Gantz have signed a power-sharing deal to form a unity government. Under the agreement, the two will take turns as prime minister, with Netanyahu going first. This has ended more than a year of political deadlock in the country after 3 stalemate elections. Israeli media reported that it will be an 18-month rotation. In a Facebook post, Gantz expressed relief that a 4th election had been averted and the emergency government would now fight coronavirus. The deal was a significant turnaround for Netanyahu, who is facing 3 corruption indictments. As part of the agreement, Netanyahu will be able to veto appointments of the next Attorney General and state prosecutor. His trial in 3 corruption cases is set to begin on May 24th. In the UK, the House of Commons is trying out its new working arrangements in preparation for MPs' return after Easter break. The Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, held a rehearsal in which ministers faced questions via video link. In the Commons, screens have been installed to allow MPs to speak remotely. The number of members present in the chamber will be limited to about 50, with their seats marked. The new hybrid system will not be used for debating legislation initially, as it is confined to those actually in the chamber. If approved by MPs, the new practices from tomorrow will initially operate until the 12th of May. The self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic says Ukraine has failed to agree on new arms disengagement areas again. This comes after the contact group on Ukrainian reconciliation met via video link to discuss troop pullouts. The DPR's envoy, Alexei Nikonov, said they suggested 4 areas to withdraw troops and weapons in Donbass, but Ukraine rejected all. He said Kiev's stance demonstrates that they have no intention to agree on any of the proposed areas, and this hampers talks. Fighting between Ukrainian forces and Russia-backed fighters in Donbass has killed more than 30,000 people since 2014. Earlier in November, both sides concluded withdrawing from the Petrovesk village in the region. In Canada, the death toll from the mass shooting has risen to 19, as police fear the number of fatalities may increase. On Sunday, a gunman dressed as a policeman went on a 12-hour shooting rampage in the eastern province of Nova Scotia. Authorities said a female police officer also died fighting the assailant, while another was injured. The 51-year-old suspected shooter was killed by police. Police identified the gunman as Gabriel Wortman, who worked as a denturist. Police said they have yet to determine the motive. The World Health Organization says it is not concealing anything from the U.S. or other member states. At a media briefing, the WHO's Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said keeping things confidential or secret is dangerous amid a crisis. He said the WHO wants all countries to get the same message immediately because that helps them prepare well and quickly. He said the global health body has a long-standing relationship with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which means the U.S. receives all information.
But at the same time, having CDC staff means there is nothing hidden from the U.S. from day one, because these are Americans who are working with us, and just comes naturally, and they just tell what they're doing.
UN agencies have called for support for displaced children in the context of the COVID-19 outbreak. The call was made by the UN Children's Fund Executive Director Henrietta Fore and the UN High Commissioner for Refugees Filippo Grandi. In a joint statement, they said displaced children have limited access to prevention services, testing, treatment, and other essential support. They said containment measures are likely to have negative consequences for children's safety and education. The statement said more displaced children are now likely to be out of school for a prolonged period, and some may never return. It said millions of children around the world have been driven from their homes and across borders by conflict and violence. Well, as coronavirus lockdowns crush businesses around the world, some high-tech local farms in the United Arab Emirates are eyeing big growth as authorities plow funds into agri-tech projects. More on that now in this report.
For years, the Desert Gulf Arab states, which rely on food imports for between 80% to 90% of local demand, have been spending billions of dollars on agricultural investment outside their borders in a quest for food security. But as the fast-spreading coronavirus piles pressure on global food supply chains, local producers hope they can now play a bigger role.
The COVID-19 virus will surely have a long-term impact. The world as we know it has changed forever. From a macro standpoint, Governments will go back to localizing certain vital industries, such as agriculture, to ensure supply will never be interrupted.
Expensive programs to increase food output in the region have in the past run up against a hot climate and lack of water. The oil-rich UAE capital Abu Dhabi had approved a series of incentive packages worth 1 billion dirhams in 2019 to support agricultural technology projects. In April, Abu Dhabi Investment Office invested $100 million in 4 companies, including US-based Aero Farms, that will build facilities in the Emirate. Aero Farms is setting up a research and development center in Abu Dhabi to help bring fresh fruits and vegetables grown in vertical farms.
Many parts of the world, people say, I don't even want to be second, I don't even want to be third. Come to me after you've proven it out again and again. In the UAE, often we hear, we want to be first, we want to be bold, let's do it faster. And that's fantastic. As an innovator, as an entrepreneur, we want to partner with people like that.
Abu Dhabi is willing to bet on new technologies at a time when the coronavirus pandemic has changed how corporations work due to global containment measures.
Well, the oil price has recovered from a historic crash as the U.S. WTI crude clawed out of negative territory to over $1 per barrel. U.S. crude crashed into negative territory for the first time in history, tumbling over 300% to below minus $40 a barrel. The price tumbled following a sell-off in May futures as the contract was set to expire today. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump said his administration would look at a proposal to block Saudi oil shipments to the U.S. Trump said the historic fall in oil prices was a short-term financial squeeze on traders. He added his administration will top up the nation's strategic petroleum reserves. Trump said the Department of Energy will lease about 77 million barrels of available space in the reserve to U.S. oil companies to help them deal with storage shortages. Virgin Australia has confirmed it has entered voluntary administration, making it the country's first big corporate casualty of the COVID-19 pandemic. Australia's second largest carrier slashed almost all flights last month following widespread travel bans. Addressing the media, the corporate's chief executive, Paul Skura, said the decision is about securing the future of the Virgin Australia group. The airline is now seeking new buyers and investors after failing to get a loan from the government. It employs about 10,000 people directly and another 6,000 through ancillary businesses. The administrator Deloitte said more than 10 parties have already expressed an interest in reviving the carrier. Time now to find out what the weather is like around the world. And there you have it. You're all caught up. Of course, for the latest updates on these and other stories, you can follow us on our social media at Indus.news. Thanks for watching this bulletin.